everyone, and welcome back to the TII podcast. My name is Craig Dennett, and I'm your host for this evening's Monday Bulletin. And I'm joined by two of our more experienced podcasters, one of whom is wearing a belter of a shirt. I'll let you make your own comments on that one. First up, we've got our resident Paralympian, Shug. How are you doing, Shug?
I'm good, mate. Super sub as per.
A late addition to the team, but always more than welcome. And we've also got Dave. How are you doing, Dave? You're on mute, Dave, so take yourself off mute before Absolutely. Well, there's only one thing to talk about tonight, and that's tomorrow night's game against Liverpool. I'm not sure how you guys are feeling, but I am particularly nervous about this one, especially after our last two results in the Champions League. But we'll come on to that in a second. Shug, just to start with yourself, I think the trip to Anfield was always in my head as the toughest of the 6 games that we'd face in this Champions League group stage. Is that how you're feeling about it, or is actually the first 2 results just showing that all the games we've got are tough?
Yeah, I think first 2 showed that they're all going to be tough, but I'm like you, I think Anfield's still going to be the big one, the hardest one. I mean, on paper, looking at results, you would say Napoli is going to be the hardest one, but I still don't believe that. I think it's Anfield all day long. The whole Scotland-England battle and things, Battle of Britain and stuff like that will bring out the best in them. Let's just hope that we get the Liverpool that drew with Brighton and not the Liverpool that hammered Bournemouth.
Absolutely. And Dave, that was one thing we wanted to talk about, the Liverpool press conference. One thing Jurgen Klopp spoke about was actually got to take each game as it comes. They know how they can play, and they know their quality, but they've just not shown it as yet. But I think Anfield, and it's a historic stadium in European football, and is it one you're looking forward to watching? Yeah, it's probably about 10 levels above it rather than 2 levels above it, but I guess we'll see to all right. Shug, just wanted to start with the press conferences which have just taken place in the last hour or two. We'll start with the Rangers one, and Giovanni Van Bronckhorst, I think, is the obvious place to start. The big headline that seems to have come out of the press conference is that Tom Lawrence has sustained a new injury in training that will likely rule him out until after the World Cup, which is a huge blow for us. Gio said that the club are still diagnosing him, but it's likely to be months but rather than weeks, which is the last thing you want to hear. Can you give us your reaction to that news?
Yeah, I think I've been pretty vocal in my own chat that I believe there's something up with the medical department just now. Nothing seems to be going our way at all. I know with injuries there's luck involved and things like that, but we just constantly seem to be getting worst case scenarios with every player involved. I mean, Kemar Roof is back out and training today, but still the club aren't giving us an indication of when he might be or whether he's after the World Cup. I think I said that right now we seem to have 2 diagnoses. You're either out until after the World Cup or nothing. You just don't get diagnosed. It's a blow. Again, the club didn't say whether it was an aggravation of his injury or the one that he had, or if it's a new injury that he's picked up. So it's going to be a blow. And he was looking probably, him and Cholak were the pick of the summer signings. And it will be a blow, but thankfully this World Cup's maybe going to do us a favour and hopefully give us a chance to rattle through these next league games and what we have left of the Champions League and reset for going again after the World Cup.
Yeah, I think to be fair to Gio, he did say that Tom Warren sustained a new injury in training, which does suggest it's not an aggravation of the injury that he had beforehand. Dave, just one of the comments coming in from Juicy Bear, who says, some name by the way, who says our players don't get injured short term, and that's kind of what it feels like at the
Yeah,
moment.
yeah.
There's no kind of quick 1 week, 2 weeks out and back into the team. It all seems to be months rather than weeks, doesn't it?
It does, yeah. As Shug said, it's pretty hard to explain, but we just seem to have a terrible run of injuries at the minute. I'm going to steal some of Shug's content from the group chat earlier, but as he pointed out, a lot of the medical team did ship out over the summer, and there's been no kind of fanfare about replacing them at all. So perhaps there's something in that. I don't know. It's just we under Gerard we were fit. We could go. If you think back, even last term, okay, Gerard had gone, but the medical staff was still there. We had that extra time in the Europa, and then we followed it up with the extra time at the semi-final, and we took that victory. So, we know what these players can do, but they just don't seem to be able to match this season. Fair play, some of them are new. Obviously, you've got new injury histories. I think some of them, like, maybe Suter. Let's face it, Hollander's no surprise. We all know what we get with him. Suter's exact same. We knew his history before we signed him. We knew it was a bit of a risk. So, yeah, it's not great, but we just kind of have to get through it. I suppose on the plus side, at least we've got a fit striker this time.
Yeah, absolutely. Paul McGarrigle comes into the comments and says we've had the most injuries,
Yeah.
at least 9 missing for the Liverpool game. Shug, do you think it's a case? They've made a point about how fit and strong our team or our squad seemed to be last year and largely under Gerrard. There were obviously some exceptions, and we were able to go extra time twice in 1 week towards the end of last season. Do you think it's just a case of we've had quite a few new faces come into the squad, the guys, the likes of Lawrence, Suter potentially as well, and they're not quite used to the tempo or the intensity of the training that Rangers have and Rangers squad have been going through over the past few years, and that's potentially contributed to their injuries?
Yeah, that could be a potential answer. I'm sure I read that the man responsible for the fitness under Gerrard's still the same man under Gio. I know that not Tom Coleshaw, but one of the other ones left that was sort of high up in the not sort of head of sports science sort of area is left, but
Is that Waller, I think?
Waller was the doctor, Dr.
Ah,
Waller. He left, but it was somebody that went with Gerrard to Villa. But either way, it could be a reflection on them, but then you've still got your Hollander and your Roof that have been part of the squad for a long time. And I mean, Hollander was back and he was in pre-season training, and then all of a sudden we've heard nothing. He's injured and he's unavailable. He's one of them that haven't been ruled out until after the World Cup, but there's been no estimation at any point of when he might show again or even what his injury is. We're not even getting told that it's a calf injury or it's a thigh injury or he's broken something. I mean, the whole Suter thing, Suter getting told that he'll be out until after the World Cup. We weren't told anything. I remember sadly his brother dying, and there was all the speculation that he was missing games because he was dealing with the grief. I know it's what all the fans are speculating, but it's clear now that he was actually injured. Nobody said anything, so again, it's coming back to the club and the communication and things having to be better. It's all coming back to that, but hopefully, come the World Cup, we'll have a pretty much fit squad after the World Cup, with maybe Hadji might be a wee bit longer, but hopefully everybody else will be back after the World Cup. And it's still strange saying that after a World Cup, when we're in October, you're thinking
slash
that's next season.
Christmas, yeah.
Yeah, but it's literally what I think is the 15th of December or something we're back playing. So hopefully we'll get a good lot of them players back by then and things will be cleared up, and hopefully communication from the club is improved as well.
Yeah, Dave, Shug's frustration, I guess, with the club is clear for all to see when it comes to not giving that specific injury detail and kind of recovery timelines as well. I think Shug shared a few examples through sort of communication at Glasgow Warriors, for example. The details each week, where the current injury status of players are and when the likely return is. Why do you think the club are doing it this way? Do you think there's a specific reason, or do you think it is just a case of bad communication?
I think it probably is bad communication, if I'm being totally honest with you, Craig. I mean, we used to do it all the time. You know, it was quite a regular thing. You'd get to that portion, the press briefing, be right, players, even at the start of the sort of Gerrard tenure, and it does seem to be more since they've kind of moved to this finance model of press conferences. I think we've seen variation in when they actually happen, even if they happen. The questions asked don't seem to be maybe as hard hitting as we as fans would like. And I mean, you've even seen kind of exchanges with official media partners saying, you know, don't you think we'd like to ask these questions? So I think overall, it's the old story, isn't it? You control the PR, you control the kind of perception of everything. And I think that's what's happening here. I think it's very much a case of trying to put out on their terms what people know and don't know.
Yeah, I'm completely in agreement with Shug. To be fair, I don't think there's any issue or any risk to the team by saying how long someone is injured for, or
Especially not after the World Cup, for God's sakes. It's
exactly. And I get that sometimes injuries, especially if they've just happened, they could take a wee bit of time to fully understand the length of time that they'll be out for and all of that side of things. But I think not updating the fans on it is just a bit strange,
yeah.
to be honest. Shug, just looking at obviously Tom Lawrence out till after the World Cup, as has been said, looking at the sort of number 10 position and the options that we currently have, kind of restricted to Arfield and Tillman at the moment in that position. There's obviously been some suggestions that Alfredo Morelos could potentially drop back in there if we try and put him and Cholak into the same team. I don't particularly see that as a solution. Glenn Kamara's played there at times, but he's not really impressed at all. And potentially someone who could have played in there, but is obviously just returned from injury, was Alex Lowry, who potentially could have made a few appearances in that position. What do you think of Arfield and Tillman as our two options now in there, and who do you think takes the primary role? It seems to be, initially I thought it would be Tillman going by the start of the season, but Arfield seems to have taken that over now.
Yeah, I think Arfield on Saturday was phenomenal off the ball and phenomenally bad on the ball. I think would be my best way of describing Arfield on Saturday. I think his runs and his movement and things like that, dragging players, his communication with Cholak, when Cholak was dropping deep, Arfield was taking up the position, was really good. Tillman started phenomenally, and I was definitely one of the ones on the Tillman train. Get the money spent, get him bought, get him in. But this is his chance now. He's going to get a run of games now. With Lawrence not being there, Tillman is going to get a chance in that number 10 role. Might even be tomorrow night, depending on whether they shift Arfield out to the right or not. But I think, considering the run of league games we've got between now and World Cup, I think we should be fine. I'm not envisioning any problems. I think Tillman and Arfield, both of their strengths and both are good enough and better than anything that the SPL teams that we are going to play can offer. So I'm pretty confident that we're strong enough there, and we've got players that can push up into that position and things like that. So, and we're not going to be playing that is the natural position for Tillman, and it's Arfield's natural position for me as well. So we're not playing players out of position to cover for Lawrence. So yeah, no, I'm pretty confident. I've got to be honest and say I hate to get an injury, but if there was a position that we're going to get an injury in, it's probably the one is the number 10 slot, because we have got them different options. Plus, couldn't be centre back because we've not got as many options there anymore.
We've got any options left, Chuck?
I think, like Shug, I was very much on the Tillman train in the first few games. of the season. I think it was in the PSV game where I first noticed that in the bigger games against teams who are potentially a wee bit quicker, a wee bit fitter, a bit stronger, he seems to want too long on the ball. And I think that seems to be what Gio sees as well, and it's why he's been dropped out of the sort of the so-called bigger games so far this season. I think that's a wee bit of a risk if we're heading into a big game like Liverpool, especially at Anfield tomorrow night. Would you see, and we'll come on to predicted team lineups later, but is it an Arfield over Tillman situation for tomorrow night?
Yeah, 100%. I think it has to be. Potentially bringing Tillman in about, 65, 70 minutes, maybe give him a bit of time, but I think it has to be Arfield. Tillman, I do still really like Tillman, but he is a young guy, and obviously he is going to have this sort of inconsistent periods. So there'll be times where he's good, times where he's not so good. There is an element as well, I think, like you said about the bigger teams potentially struggling against them. It's probably pretty easy to make yourself look good against, Dundee United, for example, whereas it's not so much in a Liverpool game. But yeah, I think Arfield tomorrow definitely for me.
Yeah, absolutely. Shug, I think one of the other main points that Gio mentioned in his press conference was one that I know will have delighted you massively. It's that Alan McGregor will retain his position going forward, having done well since coming back into the team. He said he doesn't like to talk about who's number one and number two, but says both McGregor and McLaughlin were informed of his decision last week. I think it was a very natural transition for McLaughlin to take on the number one jersey at the start of the year. But I think this is also a very natural transition given McLaughlin's form since the start of the year, albeit he did play particularly well in the PSV game. That actually got us into the Champions League. I assume you're happy with that news.
Yeah, that's a whole big into the group chat.
Right.
Got to love it. Yeah, I've been a firm believer McGregor over McLaughlin all along. However, I was definitely new goalkeeper person. I think that I think McGregor offers us more. I think we look far better defensively with McGregor behind that back line. I think he marshals them better. He pulls off bigger saves. I'll miss McLaughlin's more safety security coming for the ball. I think that's one huge thing that McLaughlin's got over McGregor, but I think people say he's better with his feet, but to me, neither of them are good with their feet. So I think, especially after I reckon Liverpool are going to pay our goal tomorrow night, I feel a lot more confident with McGregor in goal. But it's like I say, I think we should have had a new keeper in. And when you come on to my starting lineup, I'm going to have 3 veterans in that team that we were surprised got new contracts. So it's maybe a state of where we are.
Yeah, Dave, same kind of question to you. I assume it seems to be largely across the Rangers support that McGregor taking on that number one jersey again is largely accepted and probably expected. Do you reckon that's firstly the right decision, secondly acceptable that we're in this position, and thirdly, do you expect a new goalkeeper either in January or at the end of the season to come in?
Okay. Yes, no, and end of season. So yeah, I think with McLaughlin's form, it's hard to get away from that, especially that howler against Celtic. To then repeat it with another poor performance just a few days after, I don't think there's any getting away from it. I'm very much the same as Shug. I think we should have bought someone in at the start of the season. Um, a lot of people seem to be arguing over whether it's McGregor or McLaughlin's the answer, but there's not quite as many people saying actually neither of them's the answer. Don't get me wrong, McGregor did well at the weekend. I'm sure he'll do a job for us, but I think we should have been out there and signing a new option. It's quite clear that McLaughlin's form was awful, and Gio went straight to McGregor, which kind of tells us that Ross McCrory is probably not going to get a look in here. If he can't even get ahead of McLaughlin, then we've seen him ditch McLaughlin quite quickly. I don't think there's really going to be a long-term future for McCrory at the club. Rightly or wrongly, that's up to people's opinions, but I think just from what we've seen, that's quite clear. I would love to see us bring in a keeper in the winter window, but I just can't see it happening. It's kind of tough to find value in the winter window anyway. And I think if anything, the only thing I could maybe see is us sort of signing a pre-contract and maybe try to see that out towards the end of the window. Otherwise, I think it'll wait till the summer window for us to bring someone in.
Yeah, absolutely. I think goalkeeper wise, it tends to be the summer window when they come in, and it gives them a bit of time to get used to the new system, to bed in with defences, all of that sort of stuff. That I think coming in a January window when we're in a huge period of must-win games is immensely difficult for anyone, but also particularly for a goalkeeper. And I think that would be quite a harsh way to try and bed someone in that you hope is going to take the reins over the next 3, 4, 5 years or so in the team. Shug, just some of the headlines from Jurgen Klopp's press conference earlier on today. He kind of reflected on Liverpool 3, Brighton 3 from the weekend. He was asked a lot about Liverpool's start to the season, which hasn't been great by any description. I think even if you look at their Champions League campaign, they got beat 4-1 by Napoli away from home, and it was a late Joe Matip header that saw them beat Ajax 2-1 in a game that I actually think Ajax were the better team. What kind of Liverpool are you expecting to turn up tomorrow night? I think we're all a wee bit wary that tomorrow night might be the time that they just hit form. But what kind of Liverpool are you expecting to turn up tomorrow night?
Well, it's a must-win game for them. If they want to get through this group, they've got to beat us at home. There's no ifs, no buts about it. They've got to. So I expect them to be in top of their game. I expect them to be giving that all throughout. They've had a funny season because there's a real bad patch, and then they hammered Bournemouth, and everybody was like, "Oh, that's them back. That's them on it now." And then all of a sudden, came back after that international break, and they dropped points at home to Brighton. And I'm telling you, I wish Rangers played like Brighton because they're a phenomenal team just now, phenomenal team to watch, and they're going really well. But it's Liverpool at Anfield, should be beating Brighton. So I expect tomorrow night to be a really, really tough game. They'll having to be a must-win, coming off a draw, well, it should have won because we were 3-2 up in that game as well. They're going to be itching to get on the park and put the wrongs right and things like that. So I think we've got to be careful that we are not getting the hammering off the back of it, the frustration out on us. So Gio will have us well managed, and I think that's one thing that Klopp praised us on my run last season. I think Liverpool will be wary that there's probably a couple of systems we could adopt and employ tomorrow night, but you know what Liverpool are going to play like, and they're going to be absolutely desperate for the win. So it's going to be as tough a game as we'll play all season.
Dave, like Shug said, all the pressure's on Liverpool tomorrow night. I think I saw in the bookies odds they're 1-7 odds on favourites to win tomorrow night. I think we as a team, or we as supporters, know that a team can struggle to find its rhythm, and we've seen that firsthand this season with ourselves. Saturday was maybe the first signs of light in our own journey towards finding our own way of playing and our way back to form. How do you expect us to approach the game?
I think we'll be quite cautious. I think we've seen in the sort of previous games that there'll be, and again, we'll get to team selection, I know, but there's probably going to be the three kind of more defensively minded midfielders. Again, up front concerns me a little bit. I'm struggling to see how he goes for it. I think you need the pace on the wings because that's going to be our outlet. We're going to have to suck up a lot of pressure, and we need that outlet on the wings. Again, going back to your team selection, there's an argument that obviously Morelos gives you far better hold-up play and then feeds it out to the wings. but there's also an argument that, if you play Cholak, he's more likely to put it away if he does get into the box. But I do think we're going to rely an awful lot on the wingers tomorrow night. I think we have to, because the fullbacks are going to be pegged back an awful lot of it. I'd imagine they're going to have to do a hell of a lot of defending. Again, that midfield three is probably going to sit quite deep as well. So, yeah, I'm certainly not expecting us to go out all guns blazing against Liverpool.
Yeah, I don't think anyone would expect us to go out all guns blazing against Liverpool, to be fair.
Yeah.
Shug, just to round off Jurgen Klopp's comments when he was asked about Rangers, said they're a good football team, well coached. They had an exceptional European season last year, which we all know and experienced. He seemed to, in his comments, pay particular attention to the Hearts game. I don't know if that's just it's the last game they played, so I watched it all kind of thing. It seems a bit strange that they would just look at that one game, particularly when there was a red card in it as well. It can kind of distort how a team looks or plays. What do you think they would have taken from that game as to how we play?
In all honesty, I don't think they'll take much from it. I think they'll have paid more attention to the other games in Europe and probably what run last season in the second half of the season. I think all their analysts and stuff like that, they'll know us inside out. They'll probably know our players better than some of our own analysts probably know. I don't expect us to set up anywhere near as attacking as we did against Hearts. I think we'll be much more defensive and much more. I mean, we were a bit counter-attacking against Hearts, but yeah, I think Klopp probably just watched it just for the sake of watching the most recent game. I don't think that'll sway him in how they're going to approach the game. I don't think, other than Gio confirming before the Hearts game and again in the press conference that Alan McGregor is number one, I don't think there'll be anything that they didn't already know beforehand. So, yeah, I'm sure there'll be a plan in place, and the Hearts game would have had no influence on what he's going to do.
Dave, just to pick up on a final point from Klopp's press conference before we move on to the sort of starting lineup predictions and scoreline predictions as such, he said his last point said he expects a proper fight, a real fight. I think one of the unique circumstances that comes with one British team playing against another British team is that the style of football can completely change compared to a normal European game, and there's that opportunity for a much more physical game, to use the stereotype. If we turn it into more of a, inverted commas, a British game rather than a European one, does that suit us more? Does it give us more of a chance, do you think?
Again, it'll depend on the personnel, I would suggest. You've got some choices. So, for example, if you're playing Davies and left centre back, yeah, it might suit him more. If you're playing Sands, perhaps not, because he's quite a small guy. Again, the same could sort of apply through the midfield. So obviously you've got Lundstrom that's going to be quite up for it. He's already said as much, and the sort of stuff put out by the club. But then Davis, quality player, but he's not exactly your rugged physical type. Kamara's another one, quite silky, but probably not as much of a battler. So I actually think Jochi try and keep it as close to his style of play as he can. I think if we go physical, we end up losing a bit more control.
Yeah, well, one person I expect to be physical is John Lundstrom, and I don't think no matter the way we play, I think this is one game that he'll be very much up for. Shug, just on terms of obviously we've seen how we played against Ajax, which was just a completely unacceptable performance and result. We saw how we played against Napoli, which was better performance, but the result was kind of dependent on that red card. To be fair, I thought we did particularly well up until that. But so far we've had a 4-0 defeat and a 3-0 defeat. What I assume the expectations are much more on performance than on result tomorrow night for you.
Yeah, I feel if we can beat the 4 and 3-0 result, I think we'll be doing well. It's definitely going to be a performance thing. I want to see every player give their all. We've got St Mirren at the weekend at Ibrox. I don't expect, we've got plenty of time between the Tuesday and the Saturday. I don't expect any player to leave any ounce of energy in themselves. They've got to give it all the whole game and make sure that we put on a performance to make the fans proud. Not one Rangers fan. Saying Rangers fan is going there thinking we are going to win this game. There will be some. We'll all be hoping we can take something. But yeah, I think if we can get a good performance and something to give the fans cheer, something to smile about, then I think that's the best we can hope for.
Yeah, I don't think any of us are expecting a thumping victory for Rangers tomorrow, but if we can put up a good fight and be solid in our approach, then you never quite know what will happen. We might sneak a draw or even a single goal victory, and that's the eternal optimist in me that's saying that. Dave, coming on to your starting lineup predictions, we've got one in the comments from Paul McGarrigle who has Scott Wright in his starting lineup. Is he anywhere near your starting lineup?
I used to like Paul as well. I used to chat to him quite often on these streams, but I don't know now. Jokes aside, I don't think I'd have Wright anywhere near it. I think for me it would be Matondo. All right, he was very in and out in the Hearts game, but at the same time, he gave us that moment of quality, and I just don't really see that with Wright. I don't think we get the same quality as we do. We don't get the same ability to keep the ball as you maybe even do with Sakala. I know the manager seems to quite like Wright, but I think as well the Hearts game, certainly winger wise, I think is probably going to be the same. Just because his pace. No, Paul, too late to backtrack now, mate. Yeah, I think it'll probably be the same wingers, to be honest.
So can you run us through your starting 11, Dave?
Yes.
Obviously, James Sands is suspended. Remember, I know you mentioned him earlier. So James Sands is suspended.
Oh, yes, right, of course. Yeah. So I think for me, obviously, McGregor, we know he's number one now. It's going to be Tavernier and Goldson on the right-hand side of defence. The left-hand side, regardless of suspension, I'd rather have seen Davies in for this one. I think he did pretty well. Yellow card was a nonsense anyway. He shouldn't have been given it, but I can see why he was taken off to protect him. And it's going to be Borna on the left-hand side, obviously. No way you can throw Yilmaz into this. I think, as I said, we're going to have quite a defensive midfield, which I don't necessarily like a lot of the time, but I think we've got to face reality here. It's Liverpool we're playing, so I think it definitely will be. I think I've seen Davis, Lundstrom and Jack mentioned. I think that would be it for me. Potentially swap Kamara for Jack, but that would be about the only difference. I think Davis's experience will help. Obviously, Lundstrom is Lundstrom. You're not going to drop him. I think the only one left that's maybe a wee bit doubtful is whether you go Kamara or Jack. As I said, I think it'll be the same wingers that played the Hearts game. I think there's a really big question mark about who starts up top, though. I've got a feeling he's going to play Cholak, yeah? I think he will. It's one of these because you sort of talk about it and, Morelos and his hold-up play and all the rest of it, but at what point do you kind of look at what Cholak's been doing and think, well, actually, the guy hasn't done anything wrong? Basically, we're saying Morelos can hold the ball up better, but I think we'll all freely admit that Cholak is actually a far more clinical striker. So if you think to the Liverpool game you're going to get very limited shots, actually, maybe it is Cholak you want on there, ready to take those shots rather than Morelos, knowing, let's be honest, Morelos quite often needs 3-4 chances to score. And that's not slating the guy. I love Morelos, but I just don't think Cholak's done an awful lot wrong, and he probably actually deserves the chance.
So are you going for Cholak up front?
Yeah, Cholak up front for me.
Cholak with Matondo right and Kent left?
Yep.
Yeah. Okay, it'll be interesting. I think I've always just been, and I think I said on the podcast last night that Morelos for European games is a definite starter, and then Cholak for league games would be how I would see it at the moment. Shug, can you run us through your starting lineup? Is it much different from Dave's? And just on Ryan Kent as well. Obviously, he's going back to the club that he came from. I saw some pictures today of him training and coasting past Trent Alexander-Arnold in training. at times. Just a wee bit on expectations for him as well.
A wee bit of difference. I've got one of the boys I used to play curling with. He's a huge Scott Wright fan. Robert McPherson, his name is. He's absolutely massive Scott Wright fan. Personally, now that Steve Wright's given up his afternoon slot at Radio 2, I'd rather see him. But yeah, he's desperate for Scott Wright to play. I think we will go a back four. So a part of me was wondering if we'd go back three. But I think we need Lundstrom in midfield. And I think if you go back three with Sands out, you're playing King and then you've got no centre-half cover left on the bench. So I think we will go the back four that Dave mentioned. And obviously McGregor in goals. I think we'll see a midfield three of Lundstrom. I was going to say McGregor. Yeah, I want him in every position, apparently. Lundstrom. Jack, if he's fit. I'm just hoping when he came off at half time, it was precautionary. He kind of limped off at half time, so hoping it was precautionary. And I think Steve Davis plays this game. I think Scott Arfield will start on the right, Kent on the left, and I've got a feeling we might see Morelos. I thought Cholak, his hold-up play and everything was a lot better after the international window, especially against Hearts there. I think his play outside of the box is a lot better. And I do believe that if I was to pick one player that had a half chance to take it, then it would be Cholak over Morelos. But I just think Morelos offers you that with Van Dijk. I don't know who Liverpool are going to play beside Van Dijk since they've chopped and changed all season. Hopefully Joe Gomez. I think Morelos can get right underneath their skin and wind players up. So I think that'll be important. I think we've got to be careful with Kent. I thought he did some good stuff on Saturday, but I didn't think he tracked back at all. I thought he left Borna pretty exposed. I think there's a few times Hearts and Michael Smith and I want to say Chris Humphries. I think it's Stephen Humphries. I think Chris Humphries was a player from about 10 years ago, played for Motherwell, that we were linked with, I'm sure, at one point. But I thought he was left 2-on-1 a lot of times with them. And the last thing I want to see is Salah and Alexander-Arnold 2-on-1 against Borna. So I think Kent's going to have to do a lot of trading back, trekking back. But the thing with him and Morelos is if they're not signing new contracts with us this season, these are the games they've got to perform in. If they want to get noticed and they want to get a move, these are the games, especially Kent. He's really got to show up at Anfield. He's really got to show the English Premier League teams. I've seen him linked with Leeds and Villa. And I'm kind of like, well, that's just from the Ryan Kent at the weekend. The Ryan Kent from the previous 10, 20 games isn't going to Leeds or Villa. So this is the best stage for him. Champions League night, Anfield. If he can put on a show, then all of a sudden Leeds and Villa become realistic options for him. Because as far as I was concerned, if he wasn't signing a new contract with us, he was going to West Brom or something. The sort of form he was in. So it's a big night for him back at Anfield. Chance to show what Liverpool maybe missed out on. I'd love to see him score the winner. I'll dream of it. I'll never say another bad word about Ryan Kent the rest of my days if he scores a winner tomorrow night. That I will make a promise. I will die in that hill.
Right, we're going to have to keep a record of this one, Craig.
I think we're all in that hill, Shug, to be fair. Right, lads, we're quite a bit over our normal time at the moment. So, right, just quick score predictions from yourselves. Dave, you first.
Realistic or desired?
Let's go for both.
So I'd love to see us sneak a 1-0 or a 2-1 win. Not gonna lie, my head says possibly 3-1 to Liverpool.
Doug, yourself?
Yeah, Dave's robbed me. I was going to go with 3-1. I think we can sneak a goal. Going at Liverpool defences looked as nasty this season. I think we can sneak a goal, but I would take a 2-goal defeat because I think it's improvement on what we've had before in our toughest game. But since you're giving me two options, my other option's 5-0 Rangers.
I will never get used to predicting a Rangers win, a Rangers defeat. Sorry,
Yeah.
I always used to predict a Rangers win. I'll never get used to predicting a Rangers defeat and hearing at least it was better than the last one. So I'm going to go for a 1-1 draw tomorrow and stay on the optimistic side of things. Shug, Dave, thanks very much for joining us tonight, and thank you very much everyone for listening. That's been our preview of the Liverpool versus Rangers Champions League group stage match at Anfield tomorrow night. We're obviously all hoping for a Rangers win, but we are a little bit realistic as well. Thank you very much everyone for listening. Please remember to subscribe to the TII YouTube channel, and also remember to toggle on those notifications to get an email every time we go live or a new video is uploaded. Kyle and the team will be back tomorrow night immediately post-match from the Liverpool game to give you their reaction no matter the score, and we'll plenty more coming on the TII podcast network throughout the rest of the week. Until next time, goodbye.